Welcome. This is Laurie of Laurie's Heirloom Sewing, and I wanted to go over this pattern right here. I do realize that this is backwards for you because my camera on my phone is forward facing, but I will tell you that it is the McCalls Fashion Accessories pattern, K-Wit design, number M as in Mary, 5822. The instructions for all three versions of this bag are the same, but I will specifically be speaking about the medium-sized bag. This is the one that I have made twice, and there are videos on my YouTube channel with the process of making those bags, basically as we're going through it. I do make changes, especially to accessories like this, and I will describe those changes as I come to them in this video. So in the envelope, you will get all the pattern pieces for every size. So you'll have small, medium, and large pattern pieces. You will cut out exactly what you need for your version that you want to make. I did go ahead and cut out all of the pattern pieces, and I have them, stored separately. You will also receive 2 instruction sheets, one of which is printed back and front, and the third page is just a single with the fourth page being blank. On the back of the envelope, which I'm not going to show you simply because with the backwards facing camera, it would be just a blur, you will have the information that you need with a little line drawing of what the bag would look like from the front, right there. So it tells you that for the notions, you're going to need, for the medium size bag or the large, you're going to need a size 12 zipper. So that's a 12-inch zipper. And for the fabric requirements, they are listed here. So for the medium bag, you would need 3/8 of a yard of 45-inch wide fabric. For the contrast one, and as you can see, there are many contrast fabrics on these bags. So for contrast 1, which would be the sides, the bottom, and the binding, you're going to need 1/4 of a yard of 45-inch wide fabric. For contrast 2, which would be the straps, both of them, you will need 3/8 of a yard of 45-inch wide fabric. For the front pocket, you need a fabric remnant that is 9 inches by 11.5 inches. For the contrast 4, which is the lining of the bag and the inside pocket, you will need 5/8 of a yard of 45-inch wide fabric. The fusible interfacing requirements are a piece that is 18 inches, a piece that is 20 inches, and then a 2.5 yard piece. For the buckram, that's Buckram, it comes 36 inches and you'll need 1/2 yard should you choose to use it. I do not. Fusible fleece at 45 inches wide, you will need 1/2 yard. So what I've done on both bags is I removed the requirement for buckram, which is kind of a very stiff, open weave type fabric material. I removed that, and I'm using Insulbright for my fusible interfacing. So Insulbright is an interfacing that is most often used in, say, a pot holder or a casserole carrier, something where you might want to retain some heat, or even in a lunchbox if you want things to stay cool. So that's the choice that I made, removing the buckram and using Insulbright as my fleece interfacing. And that's basically all the information that you need off of the the pattern envelope. Okay, so then inside, after you have cut out your pattern pieces, you will come to page 1 of 3, even though there are 4, literally. The first thing you see is the line drawing that is on the back of your pattern envelope. I have handwritten the pattern pieces that I need for the medium version of this bag, and they start at 8, so you need 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. There are 20 pattern pieces in all within the envelope that you would potentially need to cut out. Okay, when you open this up, you're going to come to sort of a key. It tells you what the pattern markings mean, how to cut and how to mark. You're going to have English and French. Most patterns have a French translation. And then you're going to have a cutting layout key, which tells you what the right side of the fabric within this instructions would look like, what the wrong side of the pattern would look like, what the right side of the fabric would look like, and what the wrong side of the fabric would look like. I recommend that if you've never used a basic pattern like this, McCalls, Butterick, Simplicity, go ahead and kind of read that. They're almost always all the same. Some patterns are not. If you go with a quick sew, you'll have different markings, and the coloring in the pattern descriptions will be different. Okay, so starting right out the gate, you're going to see the cutting layout for the small bag. So you will need to flip to this second page, which is the reverse. It's on the back side of page 1. And starting the second block down right here is where the medium layout begins. And you'll basically just follow the instructions, medium bag, and it kind of tells you what pieces, and then contrast 1, what pieces, contrast 2, contrast 4. The reason it skips 3 is because you're going to be using a fabric remnant, and that is that 9" by 11.5" piece of fabric. So it's going to skip 3, which is what that one is. Then you're going to have the instructions for how to cut out the fusible interfacing and the buckram, should you choose to use it, and then your fusible fleece, which is where I'm using Insulbright. And as you can see, I've written that right there on my pattern so I don't forget. And this is the end of the cutting instructions for the medium-sized bag. Okay, then you bring this around to here, and it shows you the key for the sewing information. So if you're looking at this, this is the right side of your fabric, the wrong side of your fabric, the interfacing, the right side of the lining. So it's basically the same, except it's going to have little lines on it. And then the wrong side of the lining, which is basically the same as your fabric, except it has little lines on it. It shows you what the seam allowances will be throughout, unless they indicate within that instruction that you'll do it differently. Okay, so then we come down here to the sewing directions. There is a glossary of terms that you might not be familiar with if you've not sewn one of these before. It's an edge stitch, a stay stitch, and a top stitch, and it will explain how to do those. So now we're going to come down here to the bag. And the very first thing you're doing is that front pocket, and you're cutting it out of that remnant. So it gives you detailed instructions on how to take the fabric remnant and the pattern piece, which mine has already been cut out. So I'm going to show you one that has not already been cut out. This is for the small size. Now, this is the only one that has all of the markings on the pattern piece. Medium and large don't have any of those markings, and it tells you in the instructions to transfer piece number and cutting information to the pattern piece for future use. So you will on this one, you will need to write number 1 down here, how much you're going to have to cut. So the fusible interfacing requirement is to cut 1, and the fabric requirement is to cut 1. The rest of it, you have your placement line, your grain line, and your fabric cutting line, as well as that very important fold line. The fold line is the top of the pocket. So without that, if you cut this in half, then you're still going to have to sew it. but it does need to remain one piece, one pattern piece cut from one piece of fabric, no cutting in the middle. Okay, so once you have completed that particular instruction, you'll move down to the second one, and that is where you're going to pin the buckram to the wrong side of each matching fabric section, and you need to have the edges even and then basted around. You will be doing the same thing to piece number 4. So if we look at piece number 10, that is the front and back of the bag. That is where you would put the buckram if you were going to use buckram. And then piece number 4 is actually piece number 8. No, actually that is not correct. I beg your pardon. I need to redo that. Okay. It is actually piece number 11. Okay. Okay, so you will apply the buckram with a basting stitch to your piece of fabric cut from piece number 11 and piece number 10. And you'll have 2 of these. There will be the front and the back. They want you to pin buckram to both the front and the back fabric and then baste it down. Then you need to trim away the seam allowance on all of the fleece sections that you have cut out. So they're not attached to anything, and you're going to trim away the 5/8 inch seam allowance off of the piece of fleece that you have just cut out. Then you're going to put it on the wrong side of each piece number 10, the front and the back, and you're going to fuse it into place if you purchased fusible interfacing, or excuse me, fusible fleece. If you did not purchase fusible fleece, you can use 505 spray and then just leave it. Don't try to stitch it down because the stitches will show on the front of your bag. But just go ahead and use some 505 and press it onto here. It won't go anywhere. It won't shift out of place. And do the same thing on piece number 11. So you will then have your fabric, your buckram, your fleece on piece 10, front and back, both of those pieces, and the sides and the bottom of your bag, which would be one piece. Okay. Then there is this big number 4 right here, where it tells you to fuse the interfacing. Interfacing is just interfacing to the wrong side of each matching fabric section. And it tells you which you're going to be doing that to. So for purposes of this medium-sized bag, we are going to take I haven't done this yet. We're going to take the key and we're going to transfer the medium size pattern piece numbers to the small that are being described in the pattern. So piece number 1 is the front pocket. So that's going to be piece number 9. I'll just write it right on there. And piece number 5 is the inside pocket small. So the inside pocket medium is 12. And I really feel like it helps to do this. You don't have to keep flipping back and forth when you're in the process of sewing. All right, piece number 7 is the top. So the piece number 14 is the top for the medium. Piece number 6 is front and back lining. And the front and back lining in the medium is piece number 13. Piece number 4 we already know, I think, is piece 11, yes. And piece number 3, I think, is the same. Yeah, it's the same for all. The strap is piece number 3. Okay, so now that we have those marked, we don't have to keep flipping and flopping to find the right pattern number that corresponds to the size we're making. So on piece 9, piece 12, piece 14, piece 13, piece 11, and piece number 3, we are going to fuse the interfacing. With wrong sides together, we're going to fold our pocket fabric, because remember, we cut this out on either a solid piece of fabric that looked like this, or we had it folded in half right here, nice and crisp, and we cut it on the fold like that, because this is the top of the pocket. So we're going to baste all around the 3 sides that are not folded, and then we're going to do a top stitch 2 times across the top of the pocket right there. Then we're going to take the front pattern piece and we're going to baste it along the bottom edge right here. Line those raw edges up and baste it right along there. Just do exactly what this pattern tells you to do. And you're going to stitch a baste right there. Now you can either stitch the basting lines on the outside of your seam allowance and pull them out later, or you can hide them within that seam allowance. That's your choice. I prefer to remove them. But if you're using a fabric, let's say it's like a pleather, that will create holes in your fabric. So you need to be very mindful of that. You might even want to check to see what your sewing machine needle does to your fabric. Does it leave a hole? Does it disappear? You know, just check that out too. Okay, now because we're making the medium bag, we do not have to do step 7. Step 7 tells us for the large bag we need to stitch 2 strap 3 sections together at one end. So we would have 2 sections stitched together for the length. We can skip that for the medium bag. We don't have to do it. Okay, so now we've moved on. We're almost done. We've moved on to page 3 and the final page in the instructions. And I'm going to try to show you. You may have seen this in other YouTube videos. It's extremely easy to do. I'm pretending like this is the strap, and I'm going to pretend like this is the other side. So what we're going to do is take this strap and fold. This is the right side of our fabric. We're going to fold this down. So the wrong side of the fabric, we're folding the right side of the fabric to the wrong side of the fabric, and we're going to press that down all the way down the length of the strap on both of them. We only do that on one long side. We don't have to do it on the other side. So we've got all the way down pressed, and then the exact same thing on this other pretend strap that I have. We press that down. Now these are the instructions, but this is the Laurie version of what we're reading about here. This might be very helpful. Don't worry about doing what it tells you. Don't worry about this pressing step yet, right here. It tells you to turn the seam allowance on one long edge and press it. But you don't have to do that. It can be fiddly and it can be irritating. You will have to do it at one point, but not right now. So to make the straps, what I did is I stuck them together like this, like you would do, even according to here. And then I stitched along one raw edge. So all the way down just one side. That's stitched together. Then you open that out, and I'm just going to use pins to show you what I'm talking about. I'll pretend like these are stitches. That's why I love long pins for sewing. And this really truly is kind of a shortcut. You can do it exactly the way the pattern suggests, and there's nothing wrong with that, except I find it very fiddly. Okay, so pretending like those are stitches, okay? We're going to open this up, take it to the ironing board, and press that nice and crisp along that stitched line right there. Then we're going to turn it over. We're on the ironing board. We're going to turn this over. It's been pressed down. Then we're going to press this all the way down and this all the way down. And when we do that, we can then finish the instructions right here by bringing those two folded and pressed edges together. And we have our strap. Now we will need to stitch. They tell you to baste it. That's waste of thread. If you want to do it, feel free, but you don't have to. You can pin. If you feel comfortable basting, by all means do it. But if you're running low on thread, I don't recommend that you waste your thread doing a baste here. Okay, then you're going to top stitch. It's going to be, you need to stop top stitching 4.5 inches from the ends. So basically you're going to go 4.5 inches in and then top stitch 3 lines, stopping at 4.5 inches right here. And there's a very good reason for that. You're going to get to it in a moment. Once you have your straps made and top stitched appropriately, you will then pin them to the front and the back sections. So you're going to have 2 long straps. You're going to put one of them on around the front piece, and miraculously they have provided you with lines, and you will center those straps within those 2 lines on each front and back section. So do transfer those lines. If you have a heat erase pen, feel free to use it. A wet erase pen would work. If you want to use chalk, I would go with a color that's very similar to the fabric you're using because it's hard to remove. Okay, so you're going to do that. And then according to these instructions, you will then re-stitch. So you're going to go, remember those 4.5 inches that you didn't stitch? You're now going to stitch right along where that pocket is. And that's what holds the pocket to the front of the bag and the back of the bag if you put a pocket on the back. I did not, but you still need to do that on the back and the front, whichever of those options that you chose. So if you had 4.5 inches that you did not top stitch, like we just mentioned, you are now going to line up those 3 lines of stitches and attach the pocket to the front. If you didn't put a pocket on the back, just take the pocket out of the equation and do the exact same thing on the back. Okay, and now we're going to stay stitch piece number 11, which is the sides and the bottom of your bag. So this wraps around the sides and across the bottom. The reason you're stay stitching is because you don't want this to stretch or twist. Make sure you don't skip that step. Okay, and remember also we have attached, this has got fusible interfacing as well as, if I'm not mistaken, Buckram. Or in my case, I ended up using the Insulbright. Okay, so now you're going to, it tells you to pin it to the side edge of the front and the back. Please listen to me, get clips. I hurt myself so many times using pins. It's not fun. You can't sew if your hands are all messed up, so just get some clips. They're those breakable, those pop barrettes will work, or little sewing clips that you can get at Joann or any other craft or fabric store, or even binder clips. Anything to save yourself from being poked and bleeding. I was bleeding. It was terrible. So if I've never said rush out and buy something, I'm saying it now. Rush out and buy some pins or barrettes or clips. Not pins. Okay. So you have got this part right here stitched together. You're going to clip these curves. You know how that goes. They have to be clipped in order for that bag to turn the proper way out and look pretty. Really take your time pressing. Make sure you get that thread pressed in and those corners and edges pressed out nice and tight. It fits really well on the end of a traditional ironing board. Okay. Turn that the right side out, pretty side out. Okay, and then set that aside because now you're going to be working on the inside pockets. There are two, one for each side of the bag. You will be putting right sides together. Let's see if I can find that piece right here. I had to recreate mine. It got messed up, so I just redrew it. It's piece number 12. So right sides together fabric, stitch it like a regular pocket, leave a little opening at the bottom that you can turn the pocket through so the pretty side is out. Push those corners out, press it. You've got your pocket. Now top stitch twice across the top of the inside pocket and then pin it to the front and back lining. And the front and back lining do have lines drawn for where that pocket needs to go. Okay, now we're getting into this tricky part where the zipper comes into play. And I'm going to make that be a separate video because I want to be able to show you what I'm talking about. So we're going to stop here. We've done the pocket. We've done the inside lining pockets. And we're ready to just move on to the top and the zipper. And once we've done that, the rest is just ice skating, really. But look for lesson series 2 on the McCalls K-Wit Design M5822. Thank you again for joining. If you like what you saw, please hit the subscribe button and I will see you next time. Thank you.